Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming the President of the African Development Bank Group and the Chairman of the Board of Directors of the Bank Group, Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, to deliver his keynote speech.
And get us to work with our President.
Son Excellence, Monsieur Alassane Ouattara, Président de la République de Côte d'Ivoire. Son Excellence, Monsieur Azali Assoumani, Président de l'Union de Comores. Son Excellence, Monsieur John Mahama, Président de la République du Ghana. Son Excellence, Dr. Philippe Isdompango, Vice-président de la République unie de Tanzanie, représentant son Excellence, Madame Samia Suluhu Hassan, Président de la République unie de Tanzanie. Son Excellence, Monsieur Ndaba Nkosinate Gwalate, Vice-président de la République de Botswana. Son Excellence, Monsieur Robert Burg Mambe, Premier ministre de la République de Côte d'Ivoire. Son Excellence, Monsieur Ali Mahaman Lamine Zain, Premier ministre de la République du Niger. Son Excellence, Monsieur Joachim Chissano, ancien président de la République du Mozambique. Vos Excellences, les ambassadeurs et les chefs de mission diplomatique et d'organisations internationales. Honorable Madame Kandia Camara, président du Sénat de la République de Côte d'Ivoire. Honorable Monsieur Adama Bittogo, président de l'Assemblée nationale de la République de Côte d'Ivoire. Mon cher frère, ami et sœur, qu'on appelle Madame la Force Tranquille, Madame la ministre Nyale Kava, ministre de l'économie et du plan. Elle est très tranquille, je pense. Et du développement de la République de Côte d'Ivoire, présidente du Conseil du gouverneur du groupe de la Banque africaine de développement, honorables ministres et hauts fonctionnaires du gouvernement de la Côte d'Ivoire, Mesdames et Messieurs les gouverneurs du groupe de la Banque africaine de développement, Mesdames et Messieurs les administrateurs du groupe de la Banque africaine de développement, la haute direction et le personnel du groupe de la Banque africaine de développement, distingués invités, Mesdames et Messieurs, et je ne peux pas être là aujourd'hui sans ma femme Grace, donc, et ma très chère et belle épouse Grace. Qu'est-ce que je peux faire sans grâce même? Bienvenue aux Assemblées annuelles 2025 du groupe de la Banque africaine de développement. Je tiens à remercier son Excellence le Président Alassane Ouattara, mon cher grand frère et hôte, pour sa présence parmi nous aujourd'hui. Merci également à tous les chefs de l'État et du gouvernement, ainsi qu'à leurs représentants, qui nous font l'honneur d'être également présents. Je vous suis profondément reconnaissant, Excellence, d'avoir trouvé le temps d'être ici aujourd'hui et pour la confiance exceptionnelle et le soutien personnel que vous m'avez témoigné au cours de 10 années passées à la tête du groupe de la Banque africaine de développement, et je vous remercie. Ce seront mes dernières assemblées annuelles en tant que président du groupe de la Banque africaine de développement. C'est un moment privilégié de réflexion sur ces 10 années de mandat. C'est aussi l'occasion de rendre compte publiquement de la mission que vous m'avez collectivement confiée. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. So I have so much joy today. I have so much to say today. So please excuse me, as I will take a little bit of time. But you can be sure that I will not be here next year speaking as the president of the bank. So you can take and deduct all my time for next year from now. Thank you. I'm sure they are counting the time for next year as well. I wish to start by saying thank you. Thank you for electing me as president of the African Development Bank on May 28, 2015, right here in Abidjan in this same hall. And Mr. Mambre, who was there at that time, was the minister right here and is here with us today. Thank you for re-electing me in 2020 to a second 5-year term with a historic 100% votes of all the 81 regional and non-regional shareholders, the first ever such in the history of the African Development Bank. Thank you very much. As I have always said, being president of the African Development Bank for me is not a job, it is a mission. Nothing can be greater than to have been given the responsibility, the resources, the mandate, the support, and the platform to help transform Africa, the continent of my own birth. Thanks to you, African heads of state and government, for your incredible support. I made it the hallmark of my presidency with my staff to carefully listen to and for us to understand the needs of your countries and to do all possible within the available resources of the bank to support your economic and development ambitions. Thank you to the people of Africa who daily are our focus. As I say to my staff, the most important part of the African Development Bank is the development part. We must fast-track Africa's development. I am proud that over the past 10 years, collectively, working together, the African Development Bank has been an accelerator of Africa's development. The high fives of the bank to light up and power Africa, to feed Africa, to industrialize Africa, integrate Africa, and improve the quality of life of the people of Africa have been transformational for Africa. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, in the past decade, the work of the African Development Bank has impacted the lives of 565 million people. This includes 28 million people with access to electricity, 104 million people with food security, 121 million people with access to improved transport, 128 million people with access to improved health services, 67 million people with improved access to information and communications technology, 63 million people with access to drinking water, and 34 million people with access to sanitation. The bank accelerated regional integration with massive support for infrastructure to support the African Continental Free Trade Area. Over the past 10-year period, under my presidency of the African Development Bank, we would have provided, Your Excellencies, a total of $102 billion in support of Africa. This represents 46% of all the financing of the bank since its establishment in 1964. The African Development Bank financed over $55 billion in support of infrastructure, from roads to rails to airports to seaports to digital and communications, health, water, and sanitation. Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs, et ici même dans notre pays hôte, le financement de presque beaucoup de grandes infrastructures urbaines visibles à Abidjan, selon la vision de son Excellence, Monsieur le Président, a été fortement soutenu par le groupe de la Banque africaine de développement. Excellence, Monsieur le Président Alassane Ouattara, j'ai le plaisir de vous annoncer que sous ma présidence, avec le travail sans relâche de notre banque, l'appui financier de la Banque africaine de développement à la Côte d'Ivoire a augmenté 500% en 10 ans. Pour donner une ordre de grandeur, de 1964 à 2014, les appropriations cumulées en faveur de la Côte d'Ivoire s'élevaient à 2,3 milliards d'euros. Mais depuis 2015, la banque a engagé, dans 10 ans seulement, 3,6 milliards d'euros supplémentaires, soit un volume qui est presque 2 fois supérieur à celui qui a été approuvé au cours des 50 années précédentes. J'ai admis mon président Alassane Ouattara, il est un économiste mondial, donc c'est à mon faveur parce que, bon, s'il ne fait pas ça, il va faire analyse économique pour me dire qu'à Adesina, il faut aller. Donc, il ne faut pas... Excellence, cela inclut désormais célébrer pont Henri Bédier. Cela inclut aussi, à travers de projets, votre projet, Monsieur le Président, de transport urbain d'Abidjan, le pont emblématique de 1400 mètres reliant Yopougon à Adjamé, ainsi que 88 km d'autoroute urbaine et 89 carrefours réaménagés. Et cela inclut également, Monsieur le Président, toutes les magnifiques routes qui mènent au niveau stade Alassane Ouattara, où la Côte d'Ivoire a triomphé. Lors de la CAN 2023, j'étais là au stade avec Monsieur le Président. Ce jour-là, je n'ai pas pris vert, je n'ai pas pris aussi le couleur ivoirien, j'ai pris bleu et avec lunettes très noires. Donc, au cas où on marque le but, bon, je garde ma lunette. Et le président était très gentil. Après avoir pris le couple, il m'avait invité de venir quand même lui accompagner pour aller prendre le couple. Excellence, Monsieur le Président Alassane Ouattara, au-delà de la CAN, j'espère qu'en tant que banque, nous savons aussi marquer un bout pour la Côte d'Ivoire. Merci, Excellence, Monsieur le Président. Regardez le bleu là-bas, c'était bleu. Hein? Let me touch on a few, Excellencies, other projects pertaining to countries of the heads of state here present today. While several can be listed for each country, time does not allow. Nonetheless, the impact of the African Development Bank Group is tangibly felt all across Africa. In Tanzania, we are supporting $3.2 billion standard gauge railway connecting Tanzania to the Democratic Republic of Congo and Burundi. We supported the transport corridor that links Addis Ababa to Nairobi and Mombasa, which today has reduced the time to travel from 3 days to 1 day and expanded trade between both nations by 400%. The bank's last mile connectivity project in Kenya has helped to increase the number of Kenyans connected to national electricity grid from 2.42 million households in 2014 to 9.7 million households in 2024. And this has helped the country to increase electricity access from 36% to 76% over the same period. Also, the Lake Turkana, the wind project in Kenya, is today the largest operational wind power mill in all of Africa. As President Ruto of Kenya said when he conferred me with Kenya's highest national honor, the Chief of the Order of the Golden Heart, a great recognition for the work of the bank. He said, and I quote, "I am proud of the journey we started together 10 years ago. I can see its fruits. Kenyans benefit. Kenyan can feel its benefits." And this is the same all across Africa that I go with my staff. Today, the Kasungula Bridge connecting Zambia to Malawi and Namibia is expanding regional trade in Southern Africa. Since 1974, the collective dream of the people of Senegal and of Gambia was to have a bridge connecting both countries. That dream was realized by the African Development Bank and the African Development Fund. This impressive Senegambia Bridge and the 24 kilometers road leading up to it has cut travel down from 2 days to less than 10 minutes. The Port Autonome de Lomé in Togo has expanded and been turned into a major transit port. In Comoros, we supported the construction of roads linking the islands. In Egypt, the bank supported Gabal El Asfar, a wastewater treatment plant. Today, it serves 12 million residents. It is now the largest water treatment plant in Africa, and is set to serve a total of almost 18 million people by 2040. And I was just there about a week ago to see President El-Sisi on that. The bank supported the new Ouarzazate solar complex in Morocco, which is the world's largest concentrated solar power plant at the time of its completion. We launched the Lagos to Abidjan Highway Corridor, for which the African Development Bank is supporting the feasibility studies, and we have mobilized $15 billion in investment interest towards this. Mais je dois vous dire quelque chose de très important. Son Excellence, Monsieur le Président Alassane Ouattara m'avait dit, Adesina, si tu ne commences pas ce travail-là, pour cette route corridor-là, il faut rester à Abuja. Et j'ai vu le président Buhari, qui était mon président, m'avait dit, si tu ne fais pas le travail pour ça, il faut rester à Abidjan. Donc vous savez que je suis nomadique, donc entre les deux, donc I have a lot of interest to get it done. I want to thank the excellencies and all the presidents across the West Africa region for making this happen, and I look forward to us actually doing that. So thank you, sirs. In Nigeria, we are implementing the development of special agro-industrial processing zones in 8 states and the Federal Capital Territory. We have mobilized $2.9 billion to support the establishment of these zones in 28 more states of Nigeria. Your Excellencies, we stood by countries when it mattered the most. The countries that were under sanctions to clear their debt arrears to the bank, including Somalia and Sudan, and all of my shareholders are here, and they have been exemplary in understanding and supporting us through that. And today, thanks to their support and the support from the African Development Fund, Somalia is showing tremendous recovery and resilience. Excellencies, thanks to the African Development Fund and the bank's Technology for African Agricultural Transformation, which we call TAT, Sudan, even in the midst of the conflict, is showing remarkable progress towards achieving self-sufficiency in wheat. With our support, it achieves 50% self-sufficiency in wheat in 2023 and 85% by 2024. We are also standing with Zimbabwe to clear its arrears to the bank and other creditors. As champion of the debt arrears clearance process, working with His Excellency former President Chisano, who is here with us, we have supported Zimbabwe, and they are making significant progress. I am pleased that the International Monetary Fund's staff monitor program will soon be concluded. And yesterday we were there. It was such an emotive time to see how far we have come. There's hope ahead. The past 10 years were filled with never-before-seen multiple and simultaneous crises. The COVID-19 to geopolitical tensions emanating from the Russian war in Ukraine, which in turn triggered a global food crisis. At the same time, a global debt crisis and devastating climate change posed untold hardships and challenges. In the midst of this polycrisis, your bank, the African Development Bank Group, strongly supported by its shareholders, stood strong and innovatively supported Africa as it navigated each crisis. Africa survived. Africa was resilient. Africa grew out of them all, and Africa is still standing and standing tall. Thanks for your support. We stood up for Africa when it mattered the most, the COVID-19 crisis. Africa, the continent with the least room to maneuver, was effectively left alone in the midst of the most challenging global crisis it had ever faced in decades. No vaccines, no medicines, no oxygen, no masks, no gloves. As developed countries got second and third COVID-19 booster shots, vaccines, Africa was scrambling for just one shot for its population. With the support of our shareholders, the African Development Bank swung into bold action and launched a $3 billion social bond, the largest ever in world history at that time, to support Africa. We set up a crisis response facility for up to $10 billion for counter-cyclical support for our countries. Walking away from home, my exemplary staff and board of directors, we worked hard and we delivered more for Africa, even in the midst of all of that. Today, the African Development Bank Group, Your Excellencies, is implementing a $3 billion program for quality health infrastructure. A $3 billion program, again, for the development of local pharmaceutical manufacturing capacity in Africa. We created new institutions, such as the African Pharmaceutical Technology Foundation, to enable Africa to gain access to intellectual property rights and to protected technologies and processes for manufacturing vaccines and medicines. We strongly supported African agriculture, and in the process increased Africa's capacity to feed itself. Your Excellencies, in 10 years, our work allowed 104 million Africans to achieve food security and provided 13 million farmers with access to improved agricultural technologies. I see the impact of our work in supporting Africa to avoid a looming food crisis predicted when the war of Russia in Ukraine broke out. The news headlines were awash with predictions of a food crisis in Africa, as the continent stood to lose 30 million tons of food, wheat, maize, and oilseeds imported from Russia and Ukraine. The African Development Bank Group swung into immediate action with a $1.5 billion emergency food production facility. Our Feed Africa plan worked. In just 2 years, Your Excellencies, our work had allowed 14 million farmers across 30 countries to have access to improved seeds and fertilizers. They produced 44 million metric tons of food. That is 14 million metric tons of food than what we were losing from Russia and Ukraine. That's 116% above the target that we set. And the total value of the food, $17.3 billion US. Thanks to the bank's support, Ethiopia increased its agricultural areas, producing heat-tolerant wheat varieties, which grew from 5,000 hectares when we started there in 2018 to over 650,000 hectares by 2023. Today, Ethiopia is self-sufficient in wheat, and in less than 4 years, Ethiopia has become a net exporter of wheat. The landmark Feed Africa Summit, which was held in Dakar, then under President Macky Sall, brought together over 30 heads of state and government who signed the Food and Agricultural Delivery Compact to accelerate food production and food sovereignty in their countries, which was approved unanimously then by the African Union. We mobilized $72 billion globally for Africa's food security, working with our partners. The inspiration of the Feed Africa Summit informed our next bold action to achieve universal access to electricity in Africa. To fast-track access to electricity, the African Development Bank and the World Bank, myself and the president of the World Bank, Ajay Banga, we jointly launched what's called the Mission 300 in Dar es Salaam to connect 300 million people in Africa to electricity by 2030. At the Africa Energy Summit in January of this year, we organized, hosted, and co-chaired, along with Our Excellency, President Samia Suluhu Hassan, a historic gathering of over 48 African countries, where leaders unanimously endorsed the Dakar-Dar es Salaam Declaration on Energy Access with the full support of the African Union. Your Excellencies, the declaration marks an unprecedented continental commitment to accelerate energy access through coordinated national actions, regional interconnections, and enhanced investment in renewables and grid expansion. I'm pleased to say, Your Excellencies, that we mobilize $55 billion in support of these national energy compacts. Also, we advanced on providing universal access to clean cooking for women in Africa, with a successful African Clean Cooking Summit held in Paris, again co-chaired by our dynamic president, Madam Samia Suluhu Hassan, and we mobilized $4 billion for clean cooking. I mean, why is it everybody in the world cooks with gas and nobody dies? Why is it that African women are collecting firewood and charcoal and dung to cook? It doesn't make any sense. And by the grace of God, we started dealing with that particular issue. We must be able to have our women cook and cook with pride like anybody else in the world. The African Development Bank launched what's called the Alliance for Green Infrastructure in Africa, AGIA, supported by the G7, to mobilize $10 billion for climate-resilient infrastructure all across Africa. We strongly supported the youth and the women. The bank's Affirmative Finance Action for Women in Africa, AFAWA, approved $2.5 billion in support of over 24,000, in fact, it's $2.9 billion, in support of over 24,000 women-owned businesses all across Africa, expanding access of women businesses to finance through 185 financial institutions in 44 countries. And Excellencies, our women in Africa, I mean, I've never seen a bird that flies with two wings. Every bird has two wings. We have to make sure that women in Africa have access to finance, period. In support of the youth and to help unleash their potential, the bank launched what's called the Youth Entrepreneurship Investment Banks, which will expand access to finance to create youth-based wealth all across Africa. We expanded the voice and participation of civil society. I was with them yesterday. Across all of the bank's projects, we instituted a civil society forum each year to interact, to engage more transparently. Today, rather than being adversaries, we are strategic partners. We significantly strengthened the financial architecture in Africa, thanks to our African Development Fund donors. We raised $8.9 billion for African Development Fund's 16th replenishment. And that is the largest ever in the history of the fund since its establishment in 1973. We innovated and developed a new financial framework that will allow the African Development Fund to mobilize $27 billion from the global capital markets. It's my time here to actually ask that we please thank all of our donors to the African Development Fund, because without that, we'll not be able to be supporting all of these 37 countries. Thank you. The shareholders of the bank showed extraordinary support and confidence in our leadership and management of the bank. When I was first elected president in 2015, the capital of the bank stood at $93 billion. From 2015 to 2025, with the support of our shareholders, we grew the bank's capital from $93 billion to $318 billion. Thank you. We put that expanded capital into remarkable use with unprecedented financial support to all of our African countries. Let me explain for perspectives. Since the establishment of the African Development Bank in 1964 until 2014, its total approvals were $118 billion. However, in the past 10 years alone, under my presidency with our boards of directors and my staff, our total approvals were $102 billion. That represents 46% of all the approvals in the history of the African Development Bank Group. We have also ramped up our disbursements. The total disbursements of the bank group in the last 10 years alone at $59 billion represents almost half of all the disbursements in the history of the African Development Bank Group. These are not just numbers. Thanks to your collective support, this represents a new dynamism, a scale of transformative impact of the African Development Bank Group that at any point in its history, we provided significant financial support to African financial institutions, from commercial banks to regional development finance institutions to multilateral development finance institutions, boosting their capital bases. Under my presidency, with our board of directors and my staff, we set up and built Africa 50 from scratch to what it is today, for which I'm extremely proud. A first-rate private equity infrastructure investment platform with portfolio companies now worth over $7 billion. We work very closely and strongly and supported the African Union. This includes a provision of about $12 million in institutional support, over $17 million to the African Continental Free Trade Area, and over $27 million to the African Center for Disease Control. The African Investment Forum, launched by the bank and its partners in 2018, has since mobilized $225 billion in investment interest in Africa across several projects. Excellencies, the African Development Bank has strongly supported several African countries in tackling the effects of climate change. The African Adaptation Acceleration Program, which we call AAAP, is financing commitments of $25 billion from the bank and in partnership with the Global Center for Adaptation. And I'm glad to say, Your Excellencies, today, it is the largest climate adaptation program in the world. Over the past 10 years, Your Excellencies, the African Development Bank Group has become a global leader in financial innovations that have enabled us to stretch our balance sheets and deliver exceptional impact. The bank led with the use of synthetic securitization in 2015, becoming the first multilateral development bank in the world to do so. The African Development Bank also launched a $750 million hybrid capital in the global capital market in 2024, becoming also the first multilateral financial institution in the world to do so, opening up a new asset class for investors globally. The African Development Bank, your bank, spearheaded, together with the Inter-American Development Bank, the framework to allow the rechanneling of the IMF special drawing rights, SDRs, to multilateral development banks, which we can leverage by 4 to 8 times to provide much-needed financial constitutional financing at scale. Excellencies, the image, the respect, and global confidence in the bank have soared through our active and unprecedented participation in the summit meetings of the G7 and G20. With your backing, as President, along with my colleagues on our board of directors, we have amplified the voice and the needs of Africa at the highest levels globally. As my mandate that you have given me as President of the bank draws to a close, I am extremely proud of the work that we have done and the incredible impact of the bank has had on the daily lives of millions of Africans. This has been a collaborative effort that we all can take pride in. We maintained the stellar AAA credit ratings of the bank for 10 years under very difficult circumstances with your support. With all the 3 global credit rating agencies, from Fitch to Moody's to Standard & Poor's, even in the most difficult times of COVID. And I want to thank all my governors. I knew how many calls I made. I knew how many doors I locked. I knew how many conversations I had. But I knew how much your heart was with us that helped us to survive and to continue to sail despite all the challenges. To you, our governors and countries, I say thank you. Thank you so very much. It was not an easy thing, but I'm extremely grateful to you. Your Excellencies, the independent review of the governance systems of the African Development Bank by our governors asked for in 2020 was completed about 2 months ago. The review showed that the African Development Bank is very well governed, respects the independence of its oversight organs, and is at par with all of its peers globally. In view of all that transpired in 2020, I feel vindicated and enormously happy. I am exceptionally proud of the African Development Group that I lead. We developed a new institution, the African Financial Stability Mechanism, unanimously approved by the African Union to support Africa to refinance its debt on global capital markets, reduce contagion effects of economic shocks, and be the Africa's first financial safety net. The African Development Bank, your bank, is today globally recognized and respected. Your Excellencies, the African Development Bank was ranked as the best multilateral financial institution in the world by Global Finance. Your bank, the African Development Bank, was ranked for 2 consecutive years the most transparent financial institution globally by Public Watch Fund for our sovereign operations, scoring last year 98.8% on the Transparency Index, the highest ever in the history of the Global Transparency Index. And in 2024, the bank achieved its highest income ever in its 60-year history. The African Development Fund, the concessionary financing institution of the bank, ranked 2nd best in the world and higher than all 55 bilateral financing organizations in all developed countries of the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. As I complete my 2 5-year terms as president of the African Development Bank, I am proud of the legacy we are leaving behind, and I say we, it's a collective effort, for my successor, for the bank, and for Africa. We have built a world-class financial institution that will continue to advance Africa's position within a rapidly changing global development and geopolitical environment. I did not walk alone. I worked with an exemplary group of people at different points during my past 10 years. I am thankful for the exemplary support of the boards of directors over the past 10 years, for your strong support, for your strong oversight over our work and operations. And I'd like my board that currently are here today to please stand and be recognized. It's my time to recognize my board of directors. Wherever you are, please stand and be recognized, and I appreciate it. Thank you. They're a very tough board, but we get things done. I am very thankful to you, our board of governors. You have been simply incredible, and you have given us exceptional shareholder support. You were there for us, and you were there with us in the up times. You were there with us in the down times. You never doubted us. I'm indebted to you for your support. To our host country, thank you very much for your incredible hospitality. My special thanks and gratitude goes again to my senior brother, President Adesina Ouattara. Who steadfastly thank you. Who steadfastly stood by me, counseled me, supported me throughout my 10 years here as head of the bank. Monsieur le Président, je me considère comme Ivoirien. J'ai vécu ici 15 ans avant d'être élu président de la banque. J'avais fait 5 ans à Bouaké. J'étais économiste principal pour l'Association pour le développement de la riziculture en Afrique. J'ai fait Korogo, j'ai fait Man, j'ai fait Ojiene, j'ai fait Galois, j'ai fait Dalois. J'ai encadré 10 étudiants ivoiriens à la Centre ivoirien de recherche, l'économie et sociale, tout en français. 9 sur 10 ont eu très bien avec félicitations de jury. Donc, à part du Nigeria, mon pays de naissance, c'est le pays où j'ai vécu le plus long dans toute ma vie. Donc, je me considère comme Ivoirien. Merci, mon cher frère, Monsieur le Président. Vous étiez là. Vous m'avez beaucoup soutenu. Chaque fois, grâce, tu peux se lever avec moi pour remercier l'excellence. Thank you. Thank you. Merci, Monsieur le Président. Merci pour tous les gouvernements et les peuples de la Côte d'Ivoire. I'm delighted that the board of directors of the bank, now under me, they approved my vision and our vision to build a new world-class headquarters for the African Development Bank right here in Abidjan. Je précise, ça sera le siège de la banque ici à Abidjan. Nouveau siège, je dois dire. I look forward to coming back to see it rise in the sky. It will send out a powerful signal que la Côte d'Ivoire, la Banque africaine de développement, est ici à Côte d'Ivoire pour éternité. On est là. But please, no person is perfect. And no person is infallible. I have given my very best and made my own mistakes, all with good intentions. If in the course of my passionate and relentless drive to accelerate the agenda of Africa, I have offended some, in word or in deed, through acts of commission or acts of omission, please know that it was never personal. Where applicable, I ask for your forgiveness. To close, I would like to express my deepest appreciation to my staff. Please, I want all my staff to stand, if you're here, for your dedication, for your hard work, for your diligence, for your commitment, for your dependability. From literally sleepless nights on missions, at global events, on project and country visits, you put up with my habit of working late. I never sleep. They know I never sleep. C'est pas un président qui dort, je dors pas. Often at night and sometimes in the early hours of the morning, you show remarkable resilience, but today I must owe you an apology. I apologize for denying you sleep. You, my staff, are the ones that I will miss the most. You are simply amazing. You work extremely hard, and you delivered big for Africa. Thank you, thank you, thank you for your selfless work and loyal support. We have come a long way, and we did it all for Africa. Here is a high five to all of you, and keep the faith. And to my darling wife, Grace, I am deeply grateful for your being my rock. You prayed for me. You encouraged me. You inspired me. You sacrificed for me. You stayed unshakable by my side at all times. We weathered some heavy storms together, but God was with us. You always reminded me of the God who was with me on the mountaintop is also the one with me in the valley. Today, together, we made it to the mountaintops, we went through the valleys and the waters, and by the grace of God, we did not drown. Thank you very much, my love. Together, we gave African Development Bank and Africa our all. I'm very grateful to you, and I'm glad the best decision I ever made in my life was to marry you. I honestly gave Africa my heart, my mind, and my all. I fought for what I believe were in Africa's best interests. Every single day and every turn in my 10 years as president. I will continue to serve Africa today and well into the future by God's grace. I am thoroughly convinced that God did not make a mistake in creating me as an African. I took my oath of office for a second time on September 1st, 2020. I made a simple prayer. God, as I start my second time as president, the African Development Bank and humble myself before you. I ask that you give me wisdom and that Africa will shine and prosper. Together with all of our shareholders, help us to make Africa shine. That is because I know that without God, I am absolutely nothing. For all we have achieved, I owe to God's infinite mercies and grace. So now unto God, the Almighty God, who held us up and blessed the works of all of our hands at the African Development Bank over the last 10 years. To him be all praise and glory forever. May God bless the African Development Bank. May God bless the African Development Fund. May God bless the Nigerian Trust Fund that together make up the African Development Bank. May God bless the boards of directors, past and present. May God bless the boards of governors, past and present. May God bless the amazing staff of the bank, past and present. My hardworking and innovative senior management teams, and of course the incredible members of the Staff Council, past and present. May God comfort the families of some of my staff that I lost along the way over the past 10 years, especially during COVID. I will carry with me the precious memories of your service to the bank. I only wish you are here today. May God send rains of blessings on every one of the bank's 81 shareholder countries to continue to support Africa. And now, to my own beloved country, Nigeria, and the presidents who nominated and supported me for election twice as president, I owe my deepest appreciation and gratitude. To President Goodluck Ebele Jonathan, who nominated me for my first term, and to President Muhammadu Buhari, who carried it forward and backed my election and stood stoically behind me during the challenging times and supported my re-election for second time. Thank you, sirs, most sincerely. My immense appreciation and gratitude also go to Nigeria's former presidents and heads of state, President Olusegun Obasanjo, General Abdulsalam Abubakar, General Yakubu Gowon, General Ibrahim Babangida, former Vice Presidents of Nigeria, Namadi Sambo, Atiku Abubakar, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, the former governor of my state, Ibikunle Amosu, who helped me at various times. They all played major roles in supporting me. And of course, my dear sister, an amazing woman, Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala. She was then the Minister of Finance of Nigeria, and she was my indefatigable campaigner-in-chief in 2015. To President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, my president, and the Vice President Kashim Shettima, for your support over the past 2 years, I am profoundly very grateful. Thank you for graciously approving the replenishment of the Nigerian Trust Fund for another 15 years. I understand will be about $500 million. May God bless you, all of our heads of state and government in Africa, for your incredible kindness, support for me and my colleagues over the past decade. May God bless the African Union and all the regional economic communities, the private sector, the civil society, the youth and the women of Africa, the multilateral and bilateral institutions, the partner institutions, the media organizations who supported us along the way. Together, we collectively join hands around the baobab tree of Africa's challenges and opportunities. Thank you for believing in Africa. May Africa always thrive and shine. And may our light never grow dim. God bless you all. Merci beaucoup.